All right. So everything starts with a straight edge. And everything starts with the horizon line. Should I label HL? Everything starts from that single horizon line. Zoom out, zoom down, here we go. All right, okay. The vanishing point will always occur on that horizon line. But where you put that vanishing point on the drawing matters. If you put that vanishing point to the left of the drawing, it'll be a very left-heavy drawing. If you put that vanishing point on the right side of the drawing, it'll be a very right-side heavy drawing. If you put it directly in the middle, you'll get a very traditional one-point perspective. So kind of play around with this and do a few different versions of it, but where you put the vanishing point does matter in terms of how the drawing will start to look. So, the second thing we do is we draw a person. This direct proportional method that Kirby Lockard gave us depends on the dimensions of a pretty average person, with the idea that their eye level to their foot is about 5 feet. It's an assumption that we make that that's going to now become 5 feet of height. So we start with a horizon line, a vanishing point, and then a person with their eye level passing through. Okay, so get that in. The next thing we do, we take our straight edge, we place our pencil on the vanishing point, we take it to the sole of the foot, and we make a vanishing line. As Bob Ross would say, our person needs a friend. That tree needs a friend, Bob Ross used to say. Well, how big do we make our person? However big you made them, doesn't matter what. Just make a person, identical person standing on their shoulders. Whoop. Whoop. So, maybe these are two friends at a parade and one of them can't see and so says, hey, can I stand on your shoulders? And he goes, oh, maybe, okay, fine. Right, but that's another repetition of what we might consider to be 5 feet. This becomes our next vanishing line. Okay. So they're at the parade, they're kind of watching people go by, and Bob and Larry are like, Bob's on top of Larry's shoulders, and they're trying to keep it balanced. And eventually Larry's knees buckle, and they both fall down. They both fall down perfectly flat. So however how tall Bob and Larry are, they're identical height. Imagine them now completely fallen down. Oh dear. They've both fallen down. So both their bodies are laying on the pavement now. So whatever length this was, take that length and transpose it down. To there.
Another way they can do that is you can use a 45-degree triangle to
Yep.
strike the top of their
Yes, correct. And as you might expect, these become our next two vanishing lines. All right. The key to Kirby's method now involves making a guess. Making a guess. Somewhere along this, we have to make a 10-foot depth guess. How far should we make it? This is a matter of proportional judgment. Where you put it, how you make it, affects how the rest of the drawing will look. So that's why this method takes you've got to practice it a couple of times until you think you make it right. All right, I'm going to make a guess that that's about 10 feet. So Bob and Larry have now stood on top of each other's shoulders and have fallen, but they were standing next to a wall that we're going to say now is 10 feet. This is our 10-foot depth guess. The rest of the method depends on this. Okay? Just make a guess of how far you think 10 feet should be. You can then divide that in half. And that's now 2 5-foot panels that are 10 feet high. Or it's 4 5x5 panels. We can take that 10-foot wall and divide it in half, and now it becomes a bunch of 5-foot panels. Why would that be helpful? Why is that helpful for us? What does that do for us? Oh, look! What is that? We're starting to build up a floor grid, aren't we? Yeah. Well, that's exciting. That's nice, but all right, so we got a wall, we got a little bit of a floor grid. What else? What else do we need? What's missing here? The foreground, the background. So, in any elevation, if we had a square and we wanted to project forward what that square was, if we wanted to duplicate that square in an elevation view, we would go from one corner through the midpoint and we can replicate that square, right? Is that right? In elevation view, if we know where the midpoint is of that square and we go from top corner through the midpoint, we can project forward a duplicate of that square. Guess what? We're going to do that in perspective now too. Okay? From the top of this corner through the midpoint forward is the next 10 feet. That's the next 10 feet. We made our 10-foot depth guess. We projected the next 10 foot forward. That's our next 10-foot wall right there. We can divide that in half. And we can continue to build our grid. Look at that. What do you know? Bam. We can continue to build the grid. Bam. We could try to do the next 10 feet, but you can see it's basically out of the cone of vision and off the paper. Doesn't make sense for us to do that. We can go backwards though. Not backwards, but into the background. I'm going to go now from this corner through the midpoint and then up. From the bottom corner through that midpoint and then up. That's the next 10 foot into the background now. The next 10 feet. I can go from this lower corner through the midpoint. That's the next 10 feet. From this corner through the midpoint, that's the next 10 feet. All right. Then, using simple x's now, we can divide those up and continue to build our 5-foot grid. Helps to color these. That's 10 feet. That's 10 feet. Take it as far back as you want. But eventually your pencil is going to get tired because the lines are going to get really close together. 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. Okay? All right. How do we make more stuff to the right? Easy. We just keep repeating this segment here, right? For me, this has a certain length. It's about 1.5 inches. So I just keep replicating my 5-foot dimension. And I can fill in the rest of the grid as much as I want. However wide I want to make the space. This could be a street, this could be a plaza, an alley. I'll just keep making the grid. And then I'll continue my 5-foot grid that I made. Keep filling it out. Okay. All right, so let's put a piece of trace over that, and let's design something. So we've built up a grid based on a 10-foot depth guess and based on where we've put this vanishing point. How you interpret that depth guess and where you put that vanishing point matter. It'll just make a different looking grid. So I encourage you to experiment with different variations on that. It'll give you different effects each time. So let's make like a table out in the landscape or something like that. Like a bench or a table. So I simply pick one of these squares to work with. This is a 5-foot by 5-foot square. And I start pulling up vertical lines. Just imagine them extracting up out of the ground. And you go, well, wait a minute. How high should that be? Huh. Well, if I take it all the way to 5 feet, then I can barely see over it, right? But if I go over to my left-hand wall, I know where 5 feet is because our scale figure was standing there. And if I know what a 5-foot by 5-foot square is, then I can divide that in half again. And guess what I have? How tall is that line right there? That's 2.5 feet in space. I then bring that over, and that now becomes a 2.5 foot tall table. Aha! And it vanishes to the vanishing point. Makes sense? Sort of? Maybe? So here's some sort of block or table. It could be a planter. We could have people standing next to it, or leaning on it, checking it out. It could have stuff in it, perennials or things like that. Okay. Maybe there's a wall, or maybe there's something up here. There's a wall, a really tall wall. We know that that's at least 10 feet, right? We can add to that. Maybe I want a 15-foot wall. Remember our client, our patron, has ordered a bunch of stuff from a steel fabricator that just happens to be 10-foot lengths, 5-foot lengths, 2.5-foot lengths. How lucky we are. How lucky we are to have a patron that has already invested in some materials that we can use. Okay? So, this top chord is vanishing to the vanishing point. This bottom chord is vanishing to the vanishing point. We can carry things over and to the left based on the standard lengths that we know from this portion of the grid. Use our parallel bar or parallel line work to project that up. And we start to get some objects now coming in. Maybe there's something to this thing. Maybe it has some things going on with it. Or maybe we can start carving into it. Maybe we can carve out portions of things. Maybe we can imagine this as maybe some sort of wall or piece in the landscape. Maybe it's hollowed out. Again, maybe it has stuff in it. We just start to imagine these things now, populating just these figures of things made out of these dimensional steel pieces. And we go from there. Okay? So, we didn't need a plan, we didn't need a section. We can start placing objects and surfaces and textures and components in space, and we can start to imagine inhabiting them. And we can start adding things to the foreground. Remember, if they're standing at eye level, then they will be passing through the horizon line, right? No matter where they are in space. If they're standing, they're at eye level with us, no matter where they are. We can start imagining things maybe carving into the land. Maybe there's a depressed plane down there. Maybe that takes on some drama or dimension. Or it just becomes a safety hazard. Or it becomes water. A little fountain or something. You can really start to imagine some different things going on here. And because of code, we have to put a railing in front of it. Right? Right, Travis? Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's just a little fountain here, but, you know, that becomes a railing. But we can start to imagine, instead of drawing, or instead of designing and plan, we can start designing around what we want people to see and experience first. And so that is a different way of designing, different way of making a forecast for a particular space or street or alley or plaza. It could be an entirely different way of approaching the design for something. Maybe it has background. Maybe it ends at some point. But we can really make this imaginary world ours. Revisit and reapply all the techniques we've practiced and learned for the past few weeks, and use perspective to our advantage, not just as a presentation method, but as a means to design. Okay.
Yep. They actually make those.
Any questions? Yeah.
So when you go larger scale, so many people,
Then you're probably looking at a three-point perspective. Yeah, because there will be a vanishing point in infinity. So that's, skyscraper is probably going to evolve with the third vanishing point. Okay. So, simplified method, pretty easy, right? Yeah? There are more complicated methods.
Right.
They take 6 days to teach you, right? They take multiple iterations. But this is a method that relies on a guess, but it is a method that helps you to start to build out a grid, a simple grid, really fast.
He was just asking, he's like, what if they already had the grid ready? And I'm like, yeah, they actually do that. You know, they had, at one time, they sold perspective grids that were already pre-set up. And you just had to draw, but it was exactly set up how Lauren just went through it. And then you just drew on top of it.
Yep.
So that is something that did exist.
There is a book on permanent reserve in the library that is just perspective grids.
Yeah.
A variety of perspective grids. Interior grids, three-point grids for skyscrapers. Yeah, a whole book with just grids.
I still have mine that I still use.
The back of Grant Reed's landscape graphics book has a couple of grids in it. So yeah, they exist. But they can be hard to read.
Right.
Because they get these multiple lines, kind of mashing together. Instead of just going for it and just building your own and starting to imagine the space and things occupying that space. So.
When one of the ways I learned to draw was in the Michaelin workshop. It was 2 weeks of hell, boot camp of drawing, and we would do 1 hour sketch sessions where you just invented, just like this, you invented something in perspective, and then we'd hang them up and we'd turn them down from best to worst, one at a time.
Yep.
But that's all it was you were inventing in perspective, and that's what you guys would be doing.
Okay.